supported young carers, but things evolved and changed over the years, and now the club it's a club run by the council. It's just make that absolutely clear. Cardiff Council run the club, but the Cardiff East Rotarians, the club wouldn't be able to run if it wasn't for the Rotary groups around Cardiff, but all, in particular Cardiff East. They have a Rotaract, Interact and Rota Kids clubs, but they're not in the same sense as the standard normal Rotary, Rotaract, Interact and Rota Kids clubs, because the young people are quite unique, I'm going to say. They're all very special in their own ways. And they clubs are successful because there is an ongoing connection with the young carers as part of that work. And just to say that the young people themselves obviously get a lot out of being part of the club, and I'll come on to that in a moment, but they also get a lot out of being part of Rotary. They come along to our annual dinner, and our presidents are very good at allowing the young carers to be part of that annual dinner each year. And they, in the last few years, certainly since I've been involved, the new president who takes over for the new Rotary year then presents the president's medals to the Rotaract, Interact and Rota Kids presidents. And the young people find that an amazing event, amazing evening to come to. In fact, since I've been involved, many of them have never been to a dinner before, never been to a restaurant, never been to a dinner. And often, Loretta will testify to this, they sit next to us around the table and ask which knife they use or which spoon they use for their meal, because they're not used to having the ability to sit at having a formal meal. So just to be clear what work we do, the young carers are, as it says, they are young people who care, usually for somebody within their family, often parents or siblings, and they nearly, not always, but nearly always, are young people who are very vulnerable in their own right, and they are very vulnerable in the sense that they don't have very much. A lot of them live in poverty because of their circumstances, and the work that we do on a Saturday mornings, we always, when we're meeting, obviously we haven't the last year, but when we are meeting, we always cook breakfast with them. So we don't cook for them, we cook breakfast with them, and very often do some other form of cooking as well, a meal. So they have some lunch as well. And at Christmas, we always do a full Christmas dinner. So they have a little bit of breakfast, cereals and things, and then they have a full Christmas dinner. And some of them bring their parents too to have the Christmas dinner. We all sit around a huge table together, for which we're very grateful to have. Loretta almost always joins us. In fact, you've always joined us, haven't you, Loretta, to help cook in the kitchen. And a lot of the, shall I say, older members of Rotary will come along and do the washing up, which is wonderful for those of us that have cooked. So we do that. We the club is run by the council, and they have a youth leader who, for a long time, was also a Rotarian. Jim Price has a Paul Harris Fellow, and he runs the Young Carers Club as the main youth leader. And his time at the club is paid for by the council. But Jim also volunteers his time to get in a minibus, goes and collects the minibus, drops his car, picks up the minibus from the YMCA, drives around and collects huge numbers of young carers in his minibus, take them to the club and drops them home afterwards. So Jim spends nearly his entire Saturday working with young carers. And Paul and I use our cars, and other Rotarians will come in and out as required when we need transport. And all of that is paid for by Rotarians. All the transport costs are paid for by Rotarians, and Cardiff East puts in a huge amount of money each year into helping to support that transport. I mentioned the YMCA. They not only loan us the bus, the minibus, but they work with a lot of the young carers in Cardiff. They're contracted by Cardiff Council to work with young people who look after others. And so they supply us with the names and addresses, phone numbers and such like of the young people. So Paul and I have an interesting role, because we have a DBS check with the YMCA, and we also have to have a DBS check with Cardiff Council as well, because unfortunately none of these things link up. So that makes it interesting. So the sort of things we do, as I say, we go to a centre on a Saturday morning, which has just reopened and just been refurbished. There's a gym there. There's lots of game equipment and things like that for the young people. Most of the time, the young people just sit and chat, because at school, they don't get the opportunity, because friends, they may have one or two friends at school, but unless you're a young carer, you don't understand that as a young carer, you can't meet after school. You can't stay on and do things or go into town with your mates, because you've got to get home to deal with your caring responsibilities. So when they come to club, they all understand each other, and the older members of the club mentor and look after the younger members of the club, and they all have a listening ear for each other, and it's hugely rewarding. When I first started just over 5.5 years ago now, started going to the club, I watched for the first couple of days, and it was amazing that the older, more confident members of the club would come along and talk to you and ask all about you, and, oh, you're Paul's new girlfriend, are you? And things like that. But as time goes on and you get to know, when a new young carer starts at the club, they sit very quietly, won't talk to anybody. And it takes them quite a while to gain the confidence to be able to interact, and they feel safe to be able to talk. That's why it's wonderful for me going into the kitchen and working in the kitchen, doing the breakfast, because that's somewhere where they will come into the kitchen, because they feel safe around cooking and doing things in the kitchen, which they don't get to do at home. We do lots of trips. The favourite trip for the young carers, well, I think I have two favourite trips really. One is to go to Story Arms, which is an outdoor education centre, a little bit like you would know Kilve or Charterhouse in Somerset. They go there, and the centre runs the whole weekend. It's generally a long weekend. We go up on a Friday, come back on a Sunday afternoon, pick them up after school on a Friday, or they get dropped to the centre. And we all go up, and just being away from home and chilling for the weekend, doing lots of activities, doing gorge walking, they love, kayaking. The last time we went, we were able to start to use a new facility, which is those paddle boards. Have you seen paddle boards where you stand up on the boards? They absolutely loved it, and they particularly enjoy getting wet and pushing Jim into the water, don't they? And they do walks, underground walks through old mining tunnels and things like that. And it's really quite an experience to watch them actually getting physically tired, doing something they would never do at home. And the other favourite place, of course, is to go to Oakwood. I don't know if anybody knows Oakwood. It's a theme park down near, well, Haverfordwest. It's close to Haverfordwest. We go to Oakwood for the day, get there for 10 a.m. when it opens, stay there for the day, and then often call in at Saundersfoot or Tenby Beach on the way back, where they get chips and feel totally exhausted then by the time they get home. So that's a good day out. But all of these things cost money, and we do lots of work fundraising and supporting the young carers. And at the moment, I won't speak for much longer, and that will give you time to ask questions. At the moment, we've just agreed a new project, which is to work with some of the young carers. Their families are very proud, and they find it very difficult to take what they class as handouts. So the children will get a full meal, but they don't have anything else. And Rotary have put on breakfasts and things, but they won't go for it because they feel too proud to accept what they see as charity. And so we've just started a new project. The young people have been meeting on Zoom, and some of the young people, I was going to say girls, but it's not just the girls actually. There's one of the lads as well, have expressed a strong interest in sewing, taking up their own clothes and things like that, altering their clothes. And so we're going to buy some mini sewing machines for them, and subject to club approval tomorrow night, we're going to use some of the budget that we've got for young carers for the sewing machines. We've had some very generous donations as well, and also get some shopping vouchers, Tesco vouchers or Asda vouchers, so that Jim can very quietly and very carefully, when he goes to see the young carers for his doorstep visit, just pop a voucher in their hands as well, just so that they're not losing out and not missing out and not going hungry. And finally, I just wanted to say, I don't think I've forgotten anything else. I just wanted to say that the work that we do with the young carers, some of them when they start, and Paul will testify that he's known a lot of the older young carers now since they were very small when they first started coming to club. And you look at them and you look at their family background and you think, what can we do to try and help them? And you try and mentor them along. We offer help to do with references, and we offer help to do with CVs and things like that when they're doing job applications as they get older. And we're really proud that we have speakers come to the club as well. And one of them was the council leader. We introduced him to a young lad called Reese, and Reese then went to work in the council leader's office. And he spent a year doing work experience for the council leader, which was an incredible opportunity for that young man. And he's very politically minded. And last I heard, he was going to stand for the council. So that's a really interesting development. Another young man, Alex, has spent lockdown looking after his family by going to live with his uncle, his mother's brother, so that he could be the person who did all the shopping while his younger brother stayed at home doing the caring. And he's been the contact for his younger brother's mental health. And he works for Sports Direct, and he's went leaps and bounds up through the company very quickly, and goes branch to branch now, wherever he's needed. So he will get in his car, drive off to another branch and support that branch manager. Because most of the young carers, they show extraordinary dedication. And Alex is a good example of that. He, they would ring him up and say, we need somebody to step in at last minute. Oh, I'll do it. He said, I'll do it, because they're not interested in going out clubbing like all their mates. Because they've been used to staying at home, looking after the family. And then young Jess, she's child nursing. She's training to be a children's nurse. So it's wonderful when you see the young people that have come on through the club and they go on to their adult life, actually mostly in careers that you would think if it hadn't have been for the club, they would never have dreamt of going that far. But the work we've done as Rotarians, and we try and put all of them through RILA, Youth Leaders Award, and they absolutely love going away for the week, don't they, for RILA, and they really enjoy interacting with other young people. Jess made us laugh when she came back, because we went to pick her up, she got in the car, said, I've had a good time, and she said, they're all proper Welsh, that go to RILA. Because the RILA young people come from all over Wales, and some of them from the valleys, and she just remarked about them all being proper Welsh. So that's, yes, I'll stop there and stop talking and leave time for you to ask some questions.
Right.
Thank you.
Right, what, Dave?
Yes. Thank you, Jill. Yeah, and thank you to Cardiff. That was very interesting talk. It's quite a testament to you, actually, for the work that you actually put in, for the young carers. And yeah, by the sounds that they really enjoy it and participate, and the events that you hold. So I'll open it up to questions from our members, and of course your members as well. Like if you might have some questions of us.
Jill, to start the ball rolling, Jill, is there an age range of these youngsters? And secondly, are any of them sleeping on the streets, or are they all from homes?
The age range, they are entitled to come once they start secondary school. However, Jim always invites them to come along the year before they start secondary school, so that they can begin to build those peer groups and confidences as they transfer from primary to secondary school, and especially if they've got older brothers and sisters already at the club. So generally, whenever we have meals and things like that, we'll let the younger ones come along to those events. We have barbecues at the club and things like that. So it's a good time for them to begin to interact. Technically, the oldest age group is 21, isn't it?
Yeah.
21. But once a young carer, always a young carer is Jim's motto. So as they're reaching that older age group, he inducts them as volunteers. So they become young carer volunteers and stay in the club, because actually those older young carers are invaluable because they support the youngsters. And if you've got a young carer who's kicking off, the older ones will go along and sit down with them and say, come on, talk to me, what's going on, what's wrong? And invariably it's nothing to do with the actual incident in the club, it's to do with something that's going on at home, and they just need somebody to talk to.
Yes, thank you.
John Stokesbury, I thought you wanted to say. No? Yeah, no, right. Anybody else would like to ask a question? Yeah, Martin.
Jill, I mean, thanks for the talk. Sounds like something that's really quite fantastic going on there. Just a couple of quick questions. What's the kind of numbers are we talking about as far as throughput? Obviously, you've said the young carers become older young carers and they stay on and they become an active part. That's really good. But what sort of numbers are we looking at? And then the second part is, where do you get the referrals from? Is it the council link that you get the referrals for the carers, or is it just now word of mouth because it's so sort of widely known?
There is some word of mouth, but generally it's through the YMCA. The YMCA it's a charity that has a contract with Cardiff Council to work with young. So they generally, I mean, and it's been other charities in the past. Crossroads and can't think. Anyway, yeah. Other charities, it depends on which charity is working with the council and working with young carers. So the links come via them, purely because they can actually encourage young carers who they're working with to come to the club on a Saturday, to actually gain that peer-to-peer contact. Numbers, they vary, obviously. If we're going on a trip, you will almost always completely fill 2 cars plus a minibus, so 17, 24, about 30 young carers on a trip. In the past, we've had more than that. Paula's run trips which take a whole coach load in the past. Not so much now because it's a bit unwieldy and the number ratio to adults has changed with safety. So getting getting volunteers to give up a whole weekend is also quite tricky. When we go up to Storey Arms, there are 3 of us, sometimes 4 or 5 of us that will stay with the young people up at Storey Arms overnight.
25 kids.
Yeah, with about 25 kids. So yeah, it varies. But I suppose if you invited all the young carers and all their predecessors to an event, you could have as many as 50 or 60 young people. But the need, if you look across the whole of Cardiff and the Vale, there's about 3,000 young carers. So you're never going to meet the need.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Dave?
Yes, yes, Joe. Obviously, you've been doing this since 2004, and I just wondered about the scale of the work involved. It seems to be quite big. I just wonder financially and the sustainability of it. Does the club actually struggle in any context with the scale of work involved?
We do. This year has been a bit different because obviously of COVID, but Jim is always having a go at the council for lack of staff. The council is supposed to staff the youth group, but invariably it's Jim, Paul and myself.
Volunteers that we have.
And we have volunteers as well, like Loretta and
good
and others. So we have all of those, but the council is supposed to have Jim plus 3 full part-time youth workers who are there full-time on a Saturday. But to get them to stay, the best we had it was Jim plus 2 students. And the 2 students, Kelsey and Mia, were absolutely fantastic with the young people. They were great, but they were only there for a year because it was their work training for a year. And they should have then gone straight into one of the jobs. But unfortunately, the council was so lax at getting the job adverts out and all the rest of it, that that was it. They'd gone and they'd got themselves other jobs elsewhere. So it is tricky, and it's always the same though. It'll be the same if you were to do something like this here in Chard. It'd be the same working with Somerset County Council or South Somerset. It's always the same. No offence, Dave, but councils are all alike.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Jill, nice to see you again. I was going to ask, looking at not just Cardiff, but the county as a whole, is there anyone who oversees the young carers organisations in different towns?
Well, only Rotary really. There is another Rotary club up in the valleys that Donna Wallbank, who was our president.
President of our IBI.
President of our IBI. Donna has an interact group up in the valleys, and she's got young carers as part of her group because she's so passionate about what we were doing. But no, I mean, the YMCA, I suppose, is there because they're supposed to oversee everything, but they don't have the ability to work with the clubs other than the way they do it with us. So it's very tricky.
Yes, I asked this question some years ago, I can't remember when. I got a speaker to do with young carers. They approached us, and I think the lady came down from Bristol, and it appeared that she, in fact, does have contacts with young carers groups around the county. And I just wondered whether there was a similar setup in your county.
Over all the years that Paul's been doing young carers, there's been various groups that set themselves up and say that they're going to represent all the young carers and all young carer groups. So you go along to their meetings and they say that we're going to get from government funding for young carers, we're going to get government funding for this, government funding for that. and they all make lots of promises, but nothing ever comes of it.
Yeah, thank you.
All the way to London with a young carer, and you know, on the promise that they were going to be ensuring that the government made more of this, and the government was going to help, and nothing happened, did
They
it?
never get any money.
They never get anything. So it is down to the way that the volunteers work together, and to me, it's an absolute necessity, the work that we do with young carers. And speaking as a person who works with young people across Somerset, young people who are in care, but a lot of them are were young carers, and that's how they ended up in care. But it's just, from my perspective, it's a really wonderful Rotarian thing to do.
David.
Yeah, thank you.
Jill, presumably when you take these children away on a weekend or even a week, there is a need for a replacement to do their caring. Do they have to find their own replacement, or is there a pool of people who would go around and fill it?
The YMCA arrange respite care for them, for their person they're caring for. What we find really fascinating when we organise the trips, the young people who come along, when we first say we're going on a trip to Story Arms, the other young people, you know, when they've not been before, the other young people say, oh, you've got to come, you'll love it. Oh no, I don't think I could go. And what it comes down to is they don't want to leave their mother or their sister, or, you know, they don't want to put them with respite care. And this is what you often find when young people are carers, they won't take advantage of respite care. So without groups like ours persuading them that it is okay and they can go, and 9 times out of 10, in fact, probably I would say 10 times out of 10, their parents want them to go because they want their children to go and have a break. So it is a matter of persuasion and peer pressure to get them to go on these trips, even though the respite care that their parents, shall we say, for argument's sake, are entitled to is there for them. They won't take it because, you know, unless they're persuaded, because they just feel an obligation to stay with their loved ones.
Yeah, thank you.
Peter.
Yeah, sorry, Robin. Robert asked the question in his follow-up question to Jill, so my question's been answered, unfortunately, but there we go.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Mark?
I can only commend the work that the young carers do. It would be extremely difficult to award a certificate or an award to an outstanding carer because they are all outstanding. Does Rotary in Cardiff produce certificates or awards to the young carers of the area?
Well, every year we have up until this year, obviously, everything stops, doesn't it, when you're young? But every year when we have our barbecue in the summer, we have our awards day as well. So when they go to Story Arms, they all get a certificate for going to Story Arms, which we encourage them to put into their records of achievement, ready for when they go for jobs. And we also do cookery and things like that with them, for which they get certificates as well. So they have this awards event on a Saturday where at lunchtime, all their parents come for the barbecue, and then they all go into the big hall upstairs. We have a stage. A lot of the young people do singing and things like that for the audience. And then the president of the day hands out the certificates. Paul Gregory's on here. There he is. Paul's done it a couple of times. And Malcolm sadly won't get to do it because he's been the lockdown president. But it's a good fun day, and they get certificates then.
Although I have in the past given them their citation, haven't they, as an Interact club, so they do get a citation periodically for that. But I was going to say, in some ways, Jill and Paul have slightly undersold themselves a little. I mean, Paul in the beginning was part of a team that actually got the Children's Act changed to reflect young carers, which is a bit of work, although it's politics, it was behind the scenes to get that act changed to do that. So he's always a bit shy to say he did that, but I'm always happy to say that. Similarly, Jim and Paul and Jill also support the young carers on the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, which for many of them, it's the first thing they've ever achieved, and to get a proper certificate from that. You know, and some of them now have done their silver, and I think you've got a couple heading for gold now, haven't you? Or in that, once lockdown hits its way out again.
Once lockdown's finished, they all finished their silver. They've nearly finished it, but of course with lockdown they couldn't do their final expedition. So they've got their final expedition to do, and then they'll get their silver award, and then we're going for gold because we've already raised some funding to be able to do that. And
as Jill said, the young carers are members of our club as such, of our extended family, so they're always in and out on various events, as I said, and we support them quite well. But I think they quite like the fact that they got Rotarian supported. And I know a couple of years back, as Paul and myself were in bagpacking in Sainsbury's, and the young carers were helping us out, and a head teacher came up to me and said, "Why is," I won't mention her name, "there bagpacking for you?" I said, "Well, she's a member of our Interact Club." He said, "I didn't know Rotary was supporting her. I'll start to take more interest in her education now." So was an interesting thought, that because they were sort of poor attenders at school, they were almost written off from that aspect. And Jess, as you were saying, I mean, Ryla was a transformative event for Jess. Those of them who knew Jess beforehand wouldn't say boo to a goose, which she would sit quietly, wouldn't have a conversation with anybody, went to Ryla and came back a totally different person, did her O-levels without even the school knowing she was revising, and got some amazing grades out of it, which led her into then wanting to become a nurse later on. And probably if she'd come from a well-supported financial family, would have actually made med school. She was that bright. But nobody saw her at all on the horizon for that, did they, Jill?
No.
Yeah, so it's amazing sometimes, and it's a bit heart-wrenching sometimes, because a couple of years back, one of the young carer girls said to me, "If it hadn't been for Rotary, I'd be a prostitute now, because that's the only way I could earn money to look after my family." But, yeah, it's that sort of thing. You know you are making a difference. And similarly, some of our competitions work quite well with the young chef. In the past, quite a few young carers have gone on to get jobs in the catering industry on the back of it, who couldn't cook toast before they arrived, but got around there. So the judging can be a bit hard for some club members for that one. But actually, they got quite good, the one group, and actually took on and almost got the young carers competition champions, didn't they? That came in second, I think. But they had themselves quite significantly from nobody. And when you think that the schools that actually win have got full catering organisations behind them, these young people have made some tremendous gains. So, you know, as a club, we're quite proud of that. And you asked about the hours. Well, on RCC, the hours we put to young carers are about 1,500 a year from club members, and all the stuff that Jill and Paul do, and the stuff that Jim does, as well as Loretta, and the other events that we support behind that. So that's how much sort of time and effort goes into it.
I should also have said that Helen comes along and cooks as well. Yeah. And Helen came along and did some fabulous purple cooking for Purple for Polio. And the young carers did lots of purple cakes.
Yeah.
Anybody else going to have a question at all? No? Well, Dave, would you care to give a vote of thanks?
Yes, I'd like to thank Jill and Paul and Cardiff East for joining us this evening. Been very informative of what you actually do up there in Cardiff. I can say up there in Cardiff because it's slightly north of Chard, isn't it? If I can ask the Chard members to thank Cardiff East and Jill in the normal way. Round of applause.